Jesus. I hope everybody's got that same sentiment that I'm longing for. Because I know I am. Tonight, if for just a little bit, if my voice will let me, I started to call and tell him, but with our voice and everything, this morning at Sunday school, it talking about how it couldn't hardly talk without coughing. But it just seems like the Spirit just says, just go on and do what you have to do. He reminded me of the widow that had to borrow all the vessels. But when you obey, I'm not talking about me, but when you obey, God provides. And I'm praying, and I'm trying to obey Him in the fact that I want to get, because it's a good little old message. It's a good little, God give it to me because, thank you, John, or Josh. I didn't recognize the hand. And, but the world today, I would kind of sound kind of dumb if I was to get up here and say, and it's said all the time, stand up here and say, we're in a battle. We're in a battle. I figured y'all know that by now. I figured y'all know that. And I was expecting the answer, yeah, but what's new? We already know this. But I want you to understand there's a difference between a battle and a war. You got to realize and know a battle is just among the troops. You get a couple of, enemies together on a battlefield, that's a battle. But when you start talking about war, that's the battles between the governments of that country. So, like I say, we're battling a war of good and evil. The good and evil is at war, and we're just in the battles with it. See, that's what we're talking about tonight. And for just a little while, I want you to listen. One of the strategies that the enemy uses is temptation. I want you to think for just a minute. I really and truly hope that you will, just for a second, ask God to give you something out of this. I really do, because I want you to know, even though we're together as brothers and sisters fighting in this war, fighting every day, every one of us is fighting a battle of some kind. I don't care what it is. And the one thing that the devil uses so much is temptation. Because if he can tempt you into doing something, then he's got you well on the way. It may not be just little things, stealing a pencil or stealing, I was thinking to myself how it would be, and you all know it's not right, but you're tempted to do it. And this is why we're talking about fighting. Go to the grocery store or go to a hardware store or something, and give them the money, and they give you too much money, and when you get to the car, you find out. You're tempted to keep that money. But it's not that way. It's not that way. That's not yours. So what we want to do tonight for just a minute, I want you to get in your mind and get in your thinking. Every day I'm going to be tempted, but I want to be prepared when that temptation comes. We've got to be prepared. I turn your Bibles real quick. I'm not going to, like I say, I'm not going to hold you long. Oh, God. Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. He said, now when Jesus was led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted. Now my Bible's got to be tempted underlined. And it's also got a yellow highlight marker over it. Of the devil, and when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he afterward and hungered. But I want you to pay attention to that word, and was tempted, to be tempted. Now we're in that battle today that I'll say it again, that we have to be tempted. We're going to be tempted to try to move over. And when we see these things and when we know these things is going to happen, I want you to know, church, there's some things that you can do to win over that temptation. I want you to think, I was trying so hard with God's help to really get you to picture what this really is. What's really going on when you face it. To me, what I wanted to do is personalize a temptation. Like you walked up to somebody and he's got temptation rolled across his chest. And he's trying to get you to do something. Now, you know what a temptation is. That's just a thing to make you try to do something bad, do something wrong, do something different. So when we look at this, first thing we have to do, really and truly, if we're going to win a battle over temptation, the first thing, church, we have got to do is to think of ourselves. Now, I want to tell you what I'm talking about. How many of you say you're God's people? How many people of you do you say, I belong to God? This is what we need to understand. The saying is, remember who you are. Remember what's going on in the church world today. And when he comes and tempts you, I don't care if it's the most minute thing. Like I say, I'm not talking about going out and robbing a bank or, stealing a car or whatever, drugs, alcohol, whatever. I'm not talking about that. But if you go to that grocery store and you take that extra money, it's not yours, that's stealing. That's tempting. But I want you to understand something. You ask yourself, when that temptation comes up to you and it shows its face to you, what you need to do is say, I'm better than that. Amen. I'm better than that. I'm a child of God. I am not supposed to do things like that. Yeah. And that's what we need to do. Your reputation, your self-respect, and what you're saying and doing will help you if you'll just remember who you are. I don't have to do that. God's my Father. He provides for me. If I need a pencil, He'll give me a pencil. If He gives me extra money, He'll give it to me. But you got to think about yourself a little bit. I've got another little thing here in a little bit I want you to listen to. But to understand, the best example of this that I could find was Daniel. He never did forget who he was. When Jehoiakim took and gave up Jerusalem, and Nebuchadnezzar come and took it over and went and took him into slavery into Babylon. You remember the story how that they would actually take and all these young boys and young girls and they was taking them in there. I think maybe he's either between 13, 17 years old. There was 2 or 3 different. But to understand what they was doing, what they absolutely was going to do is try to take everything of the Jewish race out of them and put it on them. You understand what I'm talking about? Everything that was going to happen. They changed their name. They changed their diet. They changed their clothes. They tried every way in the world to change who they really was. You remember the story, how that when they first come, they changed his name from Daniel to Belshazzar, which was but to tell you that he didn't forget who he was and what was going on, he never did refer to himself in the whole book of Daniel. He never did call himself Belshazzar. Every time it was 75 or 76 times he referred to himself as Daniel. Now he's saying, I'm not part of this Babylon. He said, I'm a part of God. And they can't change me. You remember the food. You remember all these things that he done. He never once, he said, I can't do this. I'll eat bread and water or whatever he had. And he said, I'll never do what you want me to do because I'm God's. I know who I am. So you see, don't compromise with these things. If you do, to being a child of God, let me tell you something. If you do, you're compromising your own life. You're compromising the fact is, well, I can be both at the same time. You can't do that. Remember who you are, and when these temptations comes up, I don't care if you come up behind somebody at a grocery store or something, and you really want to get to the place that you just want to smack them. I tell you, there was one. I was tempted yesterday. Tempted, I mean tempted. I walked away and went to one that was even fuller to keep from getting mad. But this old girl, she was carrying on a conversation, being checked out at the same time. And kids, when she would talk, of course she was looking at them. She just quit what she was doing. If she's putting groceries on the counter, or if she'd quit what she was doing and standing there talking on the phone. You know, and I said, well, you know, just saying to myself, I admit, I said, God forgive me. But I said, boy, ain't some people rude just like that to one in front of me. And I really got in trouble then because that was that one's mother. But listen, don't compromise who you are. Don't compromise who you are. You're doing it. People's looking at you. He's saying practice what you preach. Do what it is. And if you trust God in what He's doing, He'll take care of you. You don't have to compromise with the world. You don't have to say what's going on in the world. All you've got to do is stay and stick to who you are. A child of the King. You could have all your last names you want. You could have a child of Gene Conover, or have a child of whoever your daddy and mama was. But you're still a child of the King. If you're saved, I should put that in. Because we might accidentally have somebody here that said, okay, I'm a child of King, I don't have to get saved. But I want you to get into this thing that the first thing you got to do is think about your self-respect. Don't ground down yourself. Don't downgrade to the fact that said, I'm going to stoop to the level of this. Because it's not you. It's really not you. You know, I thought so much how people will do these things. They'll say, that don't sound like him. You know, they don't sound like him. That don't sound like he would do something like that. If you're a child of the King, you'll live above all that. You'll live above all that. Second one we need to understand and know, church, is that when we face these temptations, we got to have some courage. And I know in the Bible, I think it's in Ephesians where it says, put on the whole armor of God, that you may withstand the wiles of the devil. Well, I got a little point out of that. Really and truly, you can have the best armor in the world. You can have the thickest shields. You can have the best thing. But if you're afraid to use it, it's not going to do you a bit of good. Amen. I've seen that so much. I thought to myself, you know, what would be a good example of that? Saul tried to give David his armor. If it was as good as he thought it would be, Saul should have been out there fighting Goliath. Right. That's right. But you see, he said to himself, now you can put this on. The armor will help you. The armor will help you. But still and yet you won't get to the place that you're running. And these things, that's what a temptation's for. It's to try you. It's to try you. We talk about maybe this morning or whatever. God, He says, deliver us from evil. He said, put us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Sometimes these things happen to prove who you really are. But still and yet, He says, deliver us from evil. If we make a mistake, you know, then we can go on and get forgiveness of it and help us across that. But we've got to have some courage. We've got to have some things that will help us do that. And another example I read was the fact that last Sunday morning, our Sunday school lesson was on Nehemiah's prayer of what he prayed. He was praying for the ability to go to the king, go and get the okay to build the walls and the gates around Jerusalem. So he went around there. And he got his okay. He's got, in fact, they all furnished his building supplies and the whole thing. But when they started building, there were some people around them that didn't like what was happening. Sanballat and Tobiah, and there was some people, some tribes and stuff around. 4, 5, and 6. They tried every way in the world to stop that building, or that construction of that. But Nehemiah never did slow down. There's one time, I think it's in chapter 6, where there's people wanted him to go hide in the temple. But in Nehemiah there, he said, you mean me, who I am? He said, run for my life? He said, do you think that somebody like me needs to go to the temple and hide? And his last words was, I will not go. He said, I'm here for the fight. And then on the last of it, I like what happened, because they finally realized, they took and tried to get him everywhere in the world to come down and have meetings with him, come down and say, we'll get this thing together. But all the time, all they had was bad things for him. When he finally got him down there, they was going to kill him, get rid of him. But you understand, God will take care of it. In the last part of that chapter, what happened? They said they finally just backed off. They backed off and said, this is the work of God. Amen. And I'll tell you what, when I read that, I thought to myself, if we'll show a little courage, God will be with us. God will take care of us, but we got to show a little courage. So if we're facing another temptation, and we're really tempted with it, we really think we want to do it, stop and check out what the results of that's going to be. How is it going to affect the people around you? How many times have you ever heard somebody say they do something bad, something wrong? Well, I ain't hurting nobody but myself. I'm going to just take Brother John. I'm just going to use him. I ain't going to take you nowhere. I'm just going to. But to understand, we know what kind of life he lives. We know what it is. But if he come up and we heard on the news where he had assaulted somebody, he done it out of the fit of anger. He done it out of that. But you understand, that don't sound like Brother John. Right. But he done it with the intentions of hurting that guy, hurting that person. But he never done it maybe thinking how it was going to affect us. How it was going to affect us, how it was going to do it. Listen, we got to think about this stuff. The battle is on. The war between good and evil is real. It's real. And you've got to know that he says we're not fighting against each other, flesh and blood. We're fighting against principalities and powers. That is, the good is fighting against the evil. But to understand that's what it is, we have to know that our decisions does affect somebody somewhere or another. The decision to be a drunkard, oh, that's just hurting me. It ain't hurting me. What about your kids? What about your wife? What about your friends? What about your job? All this thing just for the situation that you said, well, drinking is my business. Look what it's all it's affecting it is affecting you. But look at everybody else. When you come upon temptation that you want to do something, think real quick and real hard what's going to happen to people around me. They love you, and I know you love them, but you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to put some kind of hurt feeling with them. You want to do the best you can. So when a temptation comes up, stop for just a minute and say, well, if I do that, what's the consequences going to be? Yeah. Hey, when you do that, 9 times out of 10, if you just ain't hard-headed as an old rock, you'll back off from that. You say, I can't do it. I can't do it. And the last one, real quick, do it as if Jesus is standing right there. Do it as if Jesus is standing right there. How many of you are saved tonight? How many of you's got the Spirit of God in your life? So what does that tell you? He's with you wherever you're at. Because if you got him with you, so don't think you can do these temptations and God not know nothing about it. It's hard to shake him when you got him right there. So that's what we need to understand and know. Do it. Come up to these temptations. I mean, even if you have to say, I better not do that, Jesus is watching. Jesus is here in my presence. There's a lot of things you might do that you wouldn't be. You know, I've said it so many times. What, you go someplace, you do something. You know, you've heard it said so many times, would you be doing that if Jesus come back? Would you want to be doing that, found doing that, when Jesus comes back? Listen, he's right here. Wherever you're at, he may not be right here, but if you walk from here to the back door, the presence is there. The presence is right there. If you go into the back room, into the fellowship hall, the presence is back there. If you go out to your garden, if you go mow your yard, whatever you do, his presence is there. Let's go to the back. Let's go to the building to do something. You can't hide from him. He's there. He's there. And until you figure that out, you're going to be falling into some temptations. That's the main thing I need to understand. I don't care a lot of things are going on, but just to know that Jesus, I've said it so many times. You know, why do you do that? It's because Jesus is watching. To finish that up, there was a man. He was a stonemason over in, long time ago. And he was working so diligently on a little statue that was going into a castle over there. You know where they got the gargoyles and all that stuff, that protecting the castle, protecting the land and all that stuff. He was doing it with such precision. But one guy come up to him, and where it was going was kind of back in a crevice a little bit, under all this big stuff. But it was going back under this crevice kind of where it was going. The guy asked him, he said, why are you doing such good work? Why are you doing such painstaking work to this when you know when it's put up there and it's finished, nobody's going to see it. It's going to be hid. You know what his answer was? God's going to see it. God's going to see it. So that's what we've got to do. If we're working, we've got to work for him. But listen, be aware of these temptations because they can come up on you unaware. I mean, you might be doing pretty good one day, and then all of a sudden something hits. But be ready. You know, Jarrett and him, he teaches the karate and all that. I don't know what you'd call it. But he'll tell you, be ready at all times in case an attacker comes. And be ready to do what you're taught if that attacker hits. Jarrett, you know yourself, you got an attacker. He's not going to come up and announce himself. I'm going to attack you. I'm going to stab you. He's not going to do that. But he's going to slip up on you. And you see, that's the thing about it. They're cowards. A lot of demons are cowards. They want to get you from the back. They want to shoot you from the back. They won't face you first because they know who your big brother is. They know who you are. So they try to slip in from behind. But listen, keep in mind, always, keep in mind around every corner. What do they say, Jared? Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of your surroundings so that you'll know that if you see something over here that's kind of out of the ordinary, just check it out and then get away from there. Amen. If you see, I've said so many times how that people in factories and stuff will absolutely tempt themselves into an affair. They'll first start out just kind of talking and going. First thing you know, they're in the break room drinking a Coke during break. And then the next thing you know, they're dating out somewhere. But you see, if they'd have said, "No, I'm not going to do that," you know, when I first get the urge to really take and just go have coffee with them or whatever, I can't do that. I'm not that kind of person. I've got to have courage to say, "No, I can't do that." Even though they're begging you, "Let's go have a cup of coffee together." "No, I can't do that." You got to have courage. I can't do it because I'm a child of God. And then you say, "Well, I can't do it either." Why? Because I got a wife and family at home. And then the main reason why I can't do it, Jesus is watching. Amen. Jesus is watching. And I can't do nothing in front of him. So I hope it helps you a little bit. I hope you understand and know that temptations is right around the corner. Are you ready for them when the time comes? Amen. So God bless you and have a good week. Cup is his precious word, and Jesus pilots my boat. My soul pulls in to safety's port. My stern is fall apart. The bow of my vessel was so badly crushed, sin's waters had troubled my heart. I had failed so long on life's troubled sea, with my cargo of fear and despair. Then I called on his name, and he lifted the blade. Now he pilots my ship everywhere. I don't sail the stormy seas no more, unless Jesus leads the way. I won't ever drift so far from the shore, I can't hear what he has to say. I belong to a fleet that's sailing today, and today it's still afloat. My compass is his precious word, and Jesus pilots my boat. I won't sail the stormy seas no more, unless Jesus leads the way. I won't ever drift so far from the shore, can't hear what he has to say. I belong to a fleet that's sailing today, and today it's still afloat. My compass is his precious word, and Jesus pilots my boat.